Sandra, welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality, so subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So if you are in fact a sex repulsed asexual, or you want to find a movie that's got no sex in it, this is a channel to watch. So at the weekend on Sunday, for my self-date Sunday, I went to see a movie called If, which has got this cute furry purple thing in it, which I thought was very appropriate considering purple's like an asexual color. Can you see that? And so if you haven't seen the movie already and you're going to watch it, you don't want spoilers, please do not watch this video. If you want to know all about the movie, then let's crack on and reveal what happens. So If is a difficult film personally for me to watch, because although it's got no sex in it, which is great for me, and it's an animated movie but with real people in it as well, so it's a combination of animation and real people, there is a sad storyline running through it. And when I was watching the beginning of the movie, it said it was a certificate U, meaning universal, but it had a theme of bereavement. Now, I didn't actually know this until I saw that initial kind of warning under the certification. And I'm like, oh my gosh, bereavement. Like, why is it that a lot of kids' movies lately, a lot of animations particularly, seem to have really hard hitting adult storylines? I go to watch a kids' movie to chill out, relax, and kind of just forget about problems and go into a magical world. But a lot of the kids' movies these days, they aren't actually like that. They're very, very hard hitting. This does have a combination of kind of magic and fantasy about it, and it has real life in it. But for me, the theme of bereavement was quite hard hitting. And so we start off seeing the beginning of the movie where B, who's a 12-year-old girl, has lost her mother. Her mother's died, and she's with her father. And the problem is her father has to go into hospital, and he goes into the same hospital that her mum was in. And he's got to have heart surgery. So she goes to stay with her, I think it's her grandma, for a while. And as she's at her grandma's, she then begins to notice things. The grandma has a neighbor, and she goes and kind of sees this neighbor, and then there's a door as well to a place, right? And with her grandmother, she needs some batteries, I think it is, for, I'm not sure if it's for a camera or camcorder, it must be, because obviously a camera doesn't need batteries, does it? So I think it's for a camcorder. And she goes to get these batteries, and then all of a sudden she sees something. And this is how kind of the movie introduces the ifs. And so she then begins to see these ifs kind of all over the place, and well, it's mainly the purple one. So she begins to see this if, and she sees this guy going through this window. Well, it looks like a guy going through this window, and she sees him take this purple thing, which is actually called blue, but it was its owner was colorblind. So it's purple, but its name's blue. And she sees Cal, this if, but she doesn't know it's an if yet. She sees this guy called Cal take this purple thing in, whose name's Blue, to like it looks like Cal's breaking in, and he's going to this little girl's bedroom. And so it's really weird. And then Cal's trying to pace around the room, and the purple if called Blue is actually in the room already. So B doesn't actually see the purple if go in with Cal. She sees Cal, and then she sees the if coming out. Does that make sense? Because I think I said she sees the purple if called Blue go into the room. It's actually Cal that goes in, and the if is Blue, which is a purple thing. And he's going in there because Blue is trying to find a new owner because Blue's adult is now an adult, basically. So Blue is an if, and Blue's adult is because Blue's adult is an adult now, Blue has to find another kid. So what is an if? An if is an imaginary friend. IF stands for imaginary friend. So this guy called Cal is what the 12-year-old B sees going through someone's window, which looks like he's breaking in. And she discovers that Cal is trying to put Blue with a new owner, a kid, so that he belongs to someone, because he doesn't belong to anyone anymore, or at least he can't be seen by the person who did own him anymore, because the person's grown up as an adult. And so when they grow as adults, they tend to forget their imaginary friends. That's kind of the gist of the storyline. And so what happens is B decides that she can help Cal to pair all the imaginary friends that are kind of underground below this fairground. She can help pair them up with children because she is a child. And so she thinks she's best placed to understand children, understand their needs, and what imaginary friend would fit with that person. And it's very interesting because at one point they do a bit like a Britain's Got Talent or an X Factor, where there's three of them interviewing different ifs, imaginary friends, which B can see all of them. And Cal's usually does it on his own. Cal is a guy who usually has to put the if with an adult and pair them up, but he's not very good at it. And so B, as she's a child, is good at it, or she thinks she's going to be good at it because she's a child. So she understands how children's mind works and gets on their level, or so she thinks. But there's this child in the hospital that when she goes to visit her dad, this child is very positive, despite the fact that I think he's got two broken things. I think it's an arm and a leg playing sport, I think. And so this little boy is very, very positive. He says hello to B, tries to make friends with her. He does keep saying the TV's broken, want to play and stuff like that. And she doesn't really play with him, but she does leave him a flower, or later on more. She does eventually leave him a toy dinosaur. And it's weird because she's kind of like focused on these imaginary friends, but she's not realizing, and I think they should have delved more into this in the storyline, she's not realizing that this boy is a true friend. He wants to be her true friend. And I feel she's not quite reciprocating the amount of friendship that he wants to give her, because she's so caught up in the imaginary friends. And I would have liked to have seen their friendship develop more. I would have liked her to realize in the end it's much better to have real in-person friends than it is an imaginary friend or imaginary friends. I would have liked that to be the ending, that don't take for granted what's right in front of you by creating some sort of fantasy to live out. Actually be with someone in reality that does give a damn about you and does care about you, rather than the creating the fantasy. Realize what's in front of you. It's true of a lot of real life friendships that people don't realize what they've got. They take for granted, or not everyone, but a lot of people take for granted the friendships they got, thinking, oh, the person will always be there. They take them for granted. They may not treat them very well in the end. And it's disgusting, to be quite honest. And people do that in relationships, right? You don't have to be in a relationship with someone. You don't have to stay friends with someone. If someone chooses to stay your friend or chooses to stay in a relationship with you, you should be grateful for that. As long as they're a good person, and you should be thankful. And if you're not happy, then you should leave that situation, right? Because it's not fair to them. And so I would have liked the theme to have dived more into that, but it didn't. It very much was all a theme about imaginary friends and dealing with bereavement and using imaginary friends as an outlet for that. Now, I did have a situation as a kid where I was deeply unhappy as a child, and I had some tough times. I was depressed a lot throughout my childhood. And I remember that I did actually have an imaginary friend myself. I don't know if you can relate. I don't know if you've ever had an imaginary friend, but sometimes when we go through difficult times as children, we can develop an imaginary friend as a coping mechanism and tool for just surviving, and for actually having someone to like talk to us and be there for us and listen to us. I still remember having an imaginary friend. I still remember what that was like, and it felt a far more comforting and supportive than having no one, right? I used to spend a lot of time on my own being very upset and miserable, which is what actually happened, and it was not good. And so I'm not going to dive into all that type of thing in this video, but I just wanted to say it was a lot, it was a lot of difficulties. I know by having an imaginary friend, someone who I felt cared about me, someone I could talk to, someone who'd support me, someone who's there for me. Yes, I know as an adult it's an imaginary friend. I even knew at the time it's an imaginary friend, but it kind of really helped me get through some tough times. Maybe that's why I'm really good at writing. I'm very good I write predominantly non-fiction books, as you know, but I'm still very good at writing fiction books if I wanted to. And I used to well, when I was at school, I got told I should have gone to acting school because I was that good, because I can get into the heads of characters and like be like them. So, having an imaginary friend and having that experience, I can actually say that that was actually a good experience for me at the time. It was something I really needed. And so I don't think children having imaginary friends is a bad thing. I would say what is a bad thing is, why did they need that imaginary friend in the first place? And do you care enough to actually find that out? And could you, if you're a parent watching this, could you provide the child what it needs without having to create this imaginary friend to get their needs met? Because that's really, for me, that was kind of why I had an imaginary friend, because my needs weren't being met. Whereas in this movie, it's because the girl is shut off and quite numb to the pain of her mother in a way. But, she does talk to the dad. The dad's always trying to inject funds still into her life, so it's not like she's completely unaware about her mother and, she's not saying anything, but it's a way of kind of escaping the pain of her mother dying and the worry of her father also possibly dying in heart surgery. And so she stays with the grandma, and then she embarks on this venture, like I said, to match children with their ifs, their imaginary friends, the imaginary friends that no longer have an adult. And it's very interesting because she goes to this fairground, and underground there's all these different imaginary friends. And then there's a bear called Lewis, who's an if, and he's like the head of the operation, and she's saying stuff to him, and he's like, oh, if you were to make this place better for the ifs, how would you design it? I want you to use your imagination and redesign it. And there's this really good camera trickery in the movie where the whole underground place that the ifs are housed in, it all comes to life and all moves around. So all the ground moves, they have all new tiles in, and then there ends up being like different rooms with beautiful things in them, sparkly magical things. And I really love that. And she does some dancing with, I think, it's like in a circus with some animals, and I thought that was really good. So I did like elements of the movie a lot. The only thing I really didn't like was the bereavement theme. Very hard-hitting theme. I found that very difficult to deal with. In the end, it had me in tears. And I'm like, I've just had to leave a relationship. Well, I say just, it's like 5 weeks ago now, just over 5 weeks ago, right? But I'm still grieving for a lost relationship. So grieving, anything to do with bereavement and grieving for the loss of someone. Yes, the person's still here in life. Hope they have a great life, But despite how it ended, I still wish them well, But, I'm still grieving for the loss of what was with them, or what might have been in the future I thought I might have had with them. So when I'm very emotional at the moment, a lot more than usual. So when I watched a movie like that, I couldn't help but cry in it. It's really sad. And what happens is the grandma actually can't see her imaginary friend from childhood. And B works out that in order for adults to see their imaginary friends, she has to bring back the memories of what was going on in that child's life to reactivate the memory of the imaginary friend, so the imaginary friend can come back to life, or they're still alive in the imaginary world, but can come to life in their timeline, in the adult's timeline, if that makes sense. So B doesn't successfully pair the ifs any of the ifs with the boy who's in hospital, who's got like a broken leg, I think broken arm, who tries to friend her. She can't find an if suitable for him. But however, if you watch the movie to the very, very, very end, you'll find out he is paired with one. So yeah, so she tries to pair the kids with their ifs, but then she ends up pairing the adults back with their ifs, their imaginary friends, because she brings back the memories of what it was like when they had their imaginary friends, and therefore they're able to see them again. So the whole kind of theme of the movie was, as an adult, you should still remember your imaginary friends to bring them back to life. And I thought maybe I should try that. And then I'm like, no, I don't think that's a good idea, Sandra, because you're that good at imaginary friend that you could actually end up like having one again. And I don't really think that's healthy for me. But it'd be more healthier than being in a relationship with a guy who's not good for me. So I thought maybe I should give it a try, but because I remember how to do it, but then I think it's not good because you can stay in that state too long, and as an adult, I don't really think it's healthy to do that. But like I said, it is better to have an imaginary friend than a relationship where the person's not treating you well. And sometimes an imaginary friend can be like the best part of you coming out of you, because it can be like your best friend and you're treating yourself how you want to be treated. You're listening to yourself, supporting yourself, and it can actually be a positive thing. So I've not tried that as an adult, but I'm tempted now. I'm saying that. I'm like, oh, could be a good tool for you to use, Sandra, right now. But you know what I mean? I think it's a bit dangerous because, in the sense that my mind could get completely wrapped up in that and I could end up thinking something's going on in reality when it's not. You can blur all sense of reality. So you've got to be careful with stuff like that. But that was the message at the end of the film that I got from it. It's like, if you want, adults should remember their imaginary friends and they'll come back to life for you, which makes sense. But in the very, very end of the movie, the whole point is the dad who's had heart surgery. It looks like he's, well, I was going to say in a coma, but he can't be in a coma because he had no tubes coming out of his mouth. So it's really weird, but something's meant to have gone wrong in the operation and he's asleep and he's not woken up yet. But I find it weird that they didn't really have any tubes in his mouth or anything. That's a bit incongruent, I thought. But anyway, B tells the story of, the imaginary friends and everything. And then her dad wakes up. And then what happens is because her dad wakes up and he's going to be okay, then she basically can't see imaginary friends anymore. And her grandma is able to see her imaginary friend from childhood, but she can't see all the friends anymore. The neighbor says where she saw these people before, which was the imaginary friends, she saw that guy called Cal. There isn't anything there. There's an old storage cupboard. But of course, if she can't see imaginary friends because she's got no use for them anymore at that point in her life, then it's bare. But then she finally works out that Cal, who's been the guy who's been trying to pair ifs with their new owners, if you like, she works out that he was actually her if. He was her imaginary friend and he used to be a clown. Because in the narrative, in the movie, it actually does say, oh yeah, I used to be a clown. And she's like, because she's like, what happened to you? What? And he's like, oh, I used to be a clown. But she doesn't realize all along that he is her imaginary friend. And she wasn't able to realize that and see it because when her mum died, she kind of blocked out imaginary friends and everything. So by allowing herself to feel feelings for the imaginary friends again, Cal comes back to life and they're kind of reunited. And so B moves from living with her grandma back to living with her dad. Now her dad's out of hospital. And then kind of the ending is that the dad trips over Keith, which is the invisible imaginary friend. So even he had an imaginary friend that he can't see, but this is actually a visible imaginary friend that he can now see and not see, if you know what I mean. Because it's an imaginary friend that he's now aware of again, but he can't actually see this imaginary friend because the whole imaginary friend is invisible. But this imaginary friend moves and trips people up and stuff. So it's very interesting. But I got very sad in the end because like they kept pairing like they had this, what I was going to say, they kept pairing the adults back with their ifs, and that was quite upsetting. It's quite tearful. You know, it's quite sad when she had to leave her imaginary friends behind in the in like her in like where her grandma lives, the block of apartments or flats where her grandma lives, and the neighbor, neighbor says about this room where the ifs were, but she's closing that chapter in life, going back to live with her dad. But the good news is, obviously, the dad's still got an imaginary friend, and the dad has got that friend there now, so there is still an imaginary friend in the house, which is invisible. So that's kind of like meant to be the twist. But I did enjoy the movie overall. Now I'm talking about it, there's quite a lot of good qualities about the movie, but I did find it incredibly sad, and I'm gutted that it was a bereavement theme. I'm gutted that it wasn't more based on the fact the person didn't have any friends. They created an imaginary friend, then made a friend in hospital. Because I think it would be better if they had the person, like, I don't know. I was going to say shut down in some way and not getting their needs met. So that's why they had an imaginary friend. But anyway, I did think it was good that the character, the purple character, was really funny in parts. It called Blue, or even though it's purple, because Blue's like, oh, my owner was colorblind. So even though I'm purple, they call me Blue. But Blue ends up going to the hospital and going in like the laundry bin and stuff like this. And B can see Blue, but the other people in the hospital can't. So it makes it look like B is talking to herself or moving herself around the hospital, where really it's a big fuzzy purple thing called Blue. So there are some funny moments in it as well. It's not all doom and gloom. And the bit with that where all the ifs are and the fairground, that was really good. And especially when they had to interview like the imaginary friends for potential children's uh matchmaking, if you know what I mean. So it was a bit like X Factor or Britain's Got Talent style, where they were like on a panel of judges. So I thought that was really cool. So this movie has got no sex in it. It's very good, in lots of ways. I just didn't like the sad bereavement theme. So if you can handle the bereavement theme, then I'd say it's worth watching and going to see. If you really get affected by bereavement and it's really gonna hit you hard, then maybe don't see it. But anyway, I'll let you be the judge of that. Let me know what you think when you've seen the movie. If you see the movie, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Lots of love to you. Take care and see you soon. Bye.